Happy video day, guys. Christina, Brooke here, and today we are doing a highly anticipated make up your mind of a palette that you guys have been asking since you heard it has been announced. This hasn't been released, it's been announced. People are talking about it, and I saw swatches. So I was able to do a make up your mind for you guys this morning. So the palette we're talking about is the new launch from Too Faced. This is the Teddy Bare Palette, okay? So don't know a price of it. Don't know a launch date of it. This is just like brand new. They just finished announcing it on Trend Mood. A few different makeup sites have already started talking about this launch. They're saying it's going to be a summer launch, but I have a feeling this is going to launch earlier. There's just way too much information out. I think they're probably going to push it up. We're probably going to see it pretty soon. Inside of the collection, there is going to be the eyeshadow palette, which we are going to be finding today. There's going to be a face powder, which kind of looks like a highlight, but I don't know. And then there's a lip injection. So that's part of the collection. This is all I know right now, and there's no prices. I would say that the palette might be in the 40s, right? Because that's usually like around Too Faced pricing. But I'm actually pretty excited today because I feel like you guys are pretty interested in this palette. So what we're gonna do is do a make up your mind. If you're new to make up your mind, I go ahead and look through my collection to mimic the color story with items that I already own to kind of get an idea of what this palette is going to look like. I'll give you guys my thoughts on the color selection. At the end of the video, I do make up my mind and tell you guys whether I'm gonna pick it up or not, but I'm pretty excited because there's a new palette that I just finished picking up from Tarte that reminded me of this palette. And it reminded some of you guys too, because I got a few DMs from you guys on Instagram saying, hey, this looks like palette. So if you guys are excited, go ahead, hit subscribe, and if you guys like make up your minds, I do them every single week as long as there's new eyeshadow palettes released, and let's get into it. So first thing I always do is show you guys my results. So here are my results. This is how well I was able to mimic this palette. Now, I didn't want to pull too many eyeshadow palettes because I did feel like there is a very similar color story in two main palettes, which I will show you guys today. So that's what I was able to come up with. Now, I will say that in the new Teddy Bear palette, it does look like two of the colors may be able to be used as blushes. I'm not sure about this because they haven't really launched what you're going to be able to do with this palette. Like, they have not done like their whole promo or anything, but there's two colors in here that are larger panned, and I have a feeling that that may be on purpose. Maybe they can be used as multi-use. That's what I'm thinking. But let me go ahead and show you guys the palettes that I used. So the main palette that I used to mimic this eyeshadow palette was from Tarte. It's the Tartelette Juicy palette. You guys know I just picked this up just recently. This is one of the palettes that I got DM'd so much that this looks similar. So we did use it. Then the Soft Glam from Anastasia was another runner-up of the most used. I grabbed one color from Natasha Denona's Sunrise palette. So only one color came out of here. And there was a little pop of something in there. And you know, anytime they do these pops, sometimes you have to jump into other palettes. And my pop color came from the Ace Beaute palette. There's only one color in my collection that looks super similar to that pink because you guys know I am not a huge fuchsia, hot pinky type of person. So I don't own many of those colors. The palette actually has come in handy quite often for those type of colors. So those were the palettes that I used to mimic this color story. So let's start off with the first color. So for the first color, I did jump into the Juicy palette. So there is this color called Fresh Start. So Fresh Start is this color right here. This is a neutral base tone, very pretty color. This reminds me a lot of the color that's inside of the new palette. Now, I do believe that the new palette might have a little bit more of like a peachy undertone to some of these colors. On the lids blended out, I don't really think that they're gonna be a big difference. This color to me is a nice blending shade. It actually does appear on my light medium skin tone. It's a pretty tone. I do use it when I use this Tarte palette quite often, especially for blending out outer edges. So is it a revolutionary color? No, but this is not a revolutionary palette. This is a very easy, very go-to type of palette. That's what it looks like to me. I do like this color. I like that it's a matte. I think it's a useful shade, and I do think that people may love this color, especially for blending and also putting as an underlaying color. I think that that's a good tone. So the next color, I jumped into ABH and I just jumped into this color called Bronze. So now looking at this palette, I do believe that it's going to have a little bit of a bronzy hint to this metallic. I don't think this is going to be like a pure gold. I think it's going to have a little bit more bronze in it. I was kind of even leaning like it might have a little bit more orangey bronze to it, but I ended up settling for this one based off of the swatches. I think it's going to be pretty similar to this. This is a gorgeous color. Now, one thing I will point out is that Too Faced, from what I remember, and from their last pumpkin palette, which I really, really liked, I feel like their metallics are pretty strong. They're pretty like, you know, you're not getting those subtle metallics. Sure, this is going to be a very cool, vibrant looking color. There may be actually some that have some glitters in them or something like that, because I don't really know the textures. I just know if they're metallic versus matte. You can use that as an accent to a lot of different colors. So that's a great color to have in this palette. The next one, actually, I jumped into another color that I love from ABH, and it's Burnt Orange. So looking at the swatch, I believe it's going to be something similar to this color right here from ABH, okay? So when I look at their actual swatch, it almost has a little bit of like an orangey tone to it. This one almost looks like it has a little yellow and a little orange in it. So I stuck with Burnt Orange. I do think that this one might be a little grungier than Burnt Orange, but that being said, it's going to be something kind of similar. This is a really nice blending shade as well, but you can also use this as an all-over lid shade. I have enjoyed using Burnt Orange a lot. Actually, in my ABH palette, Burnt Orange is one of the tones I use the most when creating eye looks. On my skin tone, I could actually even use it as an outer V deepening shade. I've used this color a lot. So if this color is similar to this one with a little bit more yellow, it is going to make it a little bit more grungier looking, but that's okay. I actually think that with the other two colors, that's a very pretty combo. Even if you use the first three shades I showed you, that could create a very beautiful, very simple look that actually is really pretty. So yeah, the first three shades, very easy to use, very pretty. The next one, I actually stayed inside of ABH and I grabbed this color called Glistening. Now, Glistening is more of like a champagne-y metallic, okay? So looking at their swatch, I think it's gonna be something close to a champagne-y, maybe leaning a little bit pinker metallic tone. Very pretty color for inner corner highlights. A lot of times when brands leave out a color like this, it's almost like a color that you go, ah, I wish they would have put like a really light metallic. So I'm happy that they have it, just because since this palette already looks like very airy, very easy to use, I feel like it needed this type of light metallic. This is gonna be great if you're doing very simple looks and you just wanna kind of add a pop of like a metallic to the center, or if you wanna add a metallic to the inner corner. I do like the first few tones. Honestly, even though I was using the ABH palette, there's similar colors in here. It's just not the exact colors. So ABH on the first few tones had more similarities than the Juicy palette, but you know, within each one, I mean, they're kind of similar, you know? The next one is where they did like a U-turn and they said, let's put the pop. You know, anytime brands come out with these more neutral palettes that they know that you could probably find in other palettes, they always have to put something that's like, hey, you can't find this in the ABH palette. You can't find this in the Tarte palette. And this is the color. So they put like a pinky fuchsia-y, but a little orangey color, okay? But there's something about this one that I almost feel like maybe it has a tad orange in it that might actually make it look prettier. However, on the lid, it is gonna look pink. So, so what I did was I jumped into this color from the Ace Beaute palette. It's called Pink Moon. It is the closest that I can find. When you first put it on, it goes on very fuchsia-y, but when you start to blend it, I think it starts to turn into like more of this lighter orangey pink that I think is coming out in the new Teddy Bare palette. Honestly, this is probably going to be the color that people will use the least in this palette. However, it might be the color that will make this palette actually do more unique looks. You can use this color on the lower lash line, and also if you want to do one of those real big pink looking lids, you can do it with this palette too. So, I mean, that is where you're going to do something different with this palette, is by them putting in this pink. Does it match the color story? It actually does, because the rest of the colors in here are very neutral, very easy to use. The metallics also work really good with this pink. So yeah. The next one was another one that I had to jump into a different palette than the ABH or the Juicy palette, and I jumped into Natasha Denona's Sunrise. There's this color called Azalea, which is almost like a metallic that has like a little bit of like an orangey to it. Looking at the swatch, it looks so similar to this color. I do feel like it's going to look kind of similar to that. Now, that's also another interesting color. I mean, it's not like revolutionary either, but I do like that they included colors that are not the typical color scheme of like one of these neutrally palettes. This orangey metallic is also pretty interesting. You can use this one with maybe like the burnt orange, create more of like an orangey toned brown lid versus the typical champagne with brown or gold with brown. This will be like more of like that orangey with the burnt orangey brown. You can create a different kind of look because they included this metallic-y orangey metallic. So if it does go in that direction, it's going to be very pretty. There's also a chance it may have a little bit more pink than the Azalea, but I still don't think it's going to be like very pink. It still looks to me from these swatches that it has like a little bit more of like an orangey undertone to it. So I actually like that color. I think it's a pretty color. Okay, so then they actually included some deep tones, which I'm so happy that this palette has some depth to it. I have gotten before like these neutral palettes and they forget to put like the deepening shades, and I'm like, well, this is all gonna wash into one color. So you need to have deepening shades with these very light neutral tones in order to be able to create depth to looks. Color that I found that looks similar is from the Juicy palette is this color called Euphoric. I believe that this is almost like the same exact color. Like there is probably like no difference between this color and the color in the new palette. Obviously formula will be only difference, but that's a really pretty brown, a very deep, rich brown. I like that brown a lot. I think that that's a beautiful, deep, deep color to have in a palette. So if you want to go from having very light lids that are very, you know, basic, very day, just adding a brown like this to the outer corner will completely dramatize the look. You can also just use this brown on its own and kind of do like a halo eye, and now you have a very strong, very deep, very smoky look. So it's always great to have like these type of really deep colors in palettes. So far, honestly, the color story is pretty. It's nothing out of this world, but it is something very useful. So that's what I see so far in this palette. So now this color, okay? I think that this is going to be lighter than the color that I found, but it's one of those whites, you know, like those kind of like creamy whites. I ended up just going for the color Wishful right here inside of the Tarte palette because even though I think it's going to be lighter than this color, it's still like a creamy, almost white color. It actually is probably going to be a little bit more white than that, but this color, you see, like I always have this issue when they put like these white mattes in here. I always think, oh cool, it's a whitish matte, like that's gonna be so useful. But sometimes depending on how white it is, sometimes I don't want to use it. You know what I mean? Because if it's too white, it just, I don't know, it just kind of kills the look for me. So it depends on how much cream is inside of this white matte on whether I would use it a lot or not. But I have seen some beautiful looks being done with a cream white like this one, that you put it in the inner portion of the lid and then you smoke out the outer half. And that actually creates a very beautiful, very open eye. So yeah, is it useful? Yes. Am I going to use it? I'm not sure. It just depends on the color. So I do like it. I'm just like, you know, like I want to see it, you know, that one I feel like, Then we go back into this palette right here and I grabbed this color called Charmed right here in the corner. I believe that this one's going to be almost identical. Like this is probably almost the same exact color. It's a lighter brown. That's a little bit of a reddish tone to it. So it's also really nice color. It's going to show up on my lid. It is what I mixed on my eyes today. I used the color Euphoric, which is the darker one, and I also used that one together to create this look. So I tend to usually dip into a few colors when I'm creating looks, and this time I did, and that's how I created this look. This eye look would be something similar that you could create with the Too Faced palette, because I did pick colors from the Too Faced mimicked palette to create this look, and I do like that color. It's another very pretty color. It shows up on my skin tone. It is different from the other two that are already included, but at the same time, it's not like super different, but it is going to give you a little bit more depth than the other one. Now, the next one, I honestly feel like, me personally, I would have preferred this tone over the whiter color that you guys saw before. So for this one, what I did was mix two colors in the Juicy palette. I grabbed a little bit of this color right here called Inspiring, which is a little bit more peach, and then I just added a little bit of the Wishful color that we used before on top. That's going to become, those two colors together are going to combine to make a peachy white. So it's got a peachy cream. So it's going to be like a very light cream that has a little peach undertone to it. That's what I see in this swatch. I like this color more than the whiter color that we saw before. I personally, just looking at these swatches, do not think that those two were both needed, because on the lid they might do something similar. Just one is going to be brighter and the other one's going to be a little bit more dulled out. I don't know. Personal preference, I would have wanted one or the other. I would have wanted something a little bit more interesting here. That's just me though. You know, maybe some people are going to love this color, and I'm sure I'll like this one. I don't know if I'll love the other one as much though. So that one, okay, it's like, Then for the next color, I just went right on top right here to this color called Luscious or Luscious. This is a very pretty color too. It's a deeper brown that has a little bit more red in it. So it's like a reddish brown. Also really nice deepening shade. If you guys notice, there's a lot of different tones of brown in this palette, which if you like to do smoky brown lids, which I actually do like to do a lot, that's really nice to have a bunch of different browns. I do think that there's enough variation between some of these, maybe two of them so far I have seen that I'm like, they're kind of close. Like, I don't know if like when they're on the lid, they're going to make a huge difference. So I do think this next color is another unique tone. I would like to see what the texture of this one's going to be to see how unique it is. But what I did was I jumped into the Juicy palette and I grabbed this color called Wildflower, but this is a little bit too pinky mauve. So I just added a little dusk on top, which is going to make this color a little bit more brown. So if you guys can see in my swatch, it actually deepens out the color a little bit, makes it a little bit more browny mauve, which is what I kind of see in this swatch. I love this color, okay? So I was kind of looking through my collection for something similar. I'm sure like maybe in a mauve-y tone palette, I would have something even more similar to this, but I do like this color, and I like this color with browns. I think that this could create a very beautiful daily look. Like you could put this in the inner portion, smoke out with one of those brown colors, and that's gonna be a very easy, but at the same time very pretty look that you can use a lot, and people will probably just be like, wow, that's very pretty. So for the next one, I jumped right back into this palette right here from ABH. This is the Soft Glam, and I grabbed into the color called Sienna. So Sienna is another color I really love from the Soft Glam. I think it's gonna have something, I think it's gonna be similar to Sienna. The only difference is I do believe that the one that's going to be in the new Tarte palette is going to be a little bit less red and maybe a little bit more orange. That being said, on the lids blended, they're going to be kind of similar, and I love Sienna. I love Sienna. The color in the ABH palette from Soft Glam, I love that color. So if it's anything similar to that color, I know I'm gonna really like it, because I do really like that color a lot. It's a very pretty tone, and actually with the metallic that we just saw that had that mauve-y brownie undertone, I think those two colors could look really pretty together as well. Last color I actually really like. This looks like a peachy blending shade, which I love when there's peaches in palettes. Like I love a good peach. Or Petal mixed with Inspiring. So Inspiring in this palette is the peachier. Ow. Oh gosh. Inspiring right here is the peachier one, and Petal right here is a little bit more pink. So since I do feel like this is a little deeper than the Inspiring color in Juicy, I added a little bit of Petal to it, and that's how I was able to create a color that looks almost similar. So I was able to find a similar color by mixing those two together, but I really like the color inside of the new Too Faced palette. So there we go. Vroom. That's what it's basically going to look like. So let's think about this. I personally feel, for me, I really like the colors that Too Faced put inside of this palette as an all-in-one palette. There's a lot of these colors that I actually like to use together. So for example, the Tarte Juicy palette, I really like this palette. I think it's a very pretty, very neutral, very easy to wear palette. But the thing with this one is the metallics in here are very soft. So for everyday looks, for going to the grocery store, for maybe even going to an office job that you don't want to have like very strong metallics on your lids or very soft looks, this works wonders, okay? I would say that I would compare this palette, the new one from Too Faced, more to like a Soft Glam. Now, I know Soft Glam does not have all of the colors, and this goes richer than the new palette does, but I think between the formula of the metallics of the Too Faced palette, how it probably will be, it's probably gonna be something more similar to this. I remember Too Faced, their metallics can be very in your face. So if I look at like my pumpkin spice that I got this year, some of those metallics are like insane, and there's also some that have glitter in them. It's all going to depend on which ones have glitter or which ones are super strong, but I would say it would be more like a formula like this, only with a color scheme that is closer to the Juicy palette, right? So it's going to be closer to this one because I feel like I used the Juicy a tad more. So I personally feel like if you're somebody who wants like that neutral palette that has very pretty tones to create more subtle looking lids, but you want those metallics to pop, I feel like the Too Faced one is going to be the route you're going to maybe want to take versus even this one, okay? So in my opinion, I want to pick this up. So I'm going to make up my mind right now and say yes, I'm going to pick this up because I love a neutral lid. I don't think there's anything boring about doing something neutral on the lid. Yes, it's not going to be shocking on camera, but in person, these neutral tones can look so beautiful and so well put together that it's not like too in your face. This palette looks to me like something that I probably would use a lot. Love to know if the two pans that are bigger can be used as blushes. I think that would be amazing. I think that this might be a beautiful palette for people who like those very easy lids but want a little bit more pizzazz in their metallics. So that's where I'm gonna leave this. I think it's gonna be very pretty. I'm excited. Crossing my fingers, it's very similar to what we see in these swatches. I believe Too Faced is pretty good with their swatches because I think when I did the pumpkin spice, the colors were almost identical. So I'm feeling that it's going to be kind of similar to what I found, and I think it's a very pretty palette. Like I said before though, there is like two brown mattes, like the softer ones, that I do think might be a little repetitive. They're going to be different in tone, but I don't think on the lid they'll make a huge difference. But I still like it. I want to know from you guys, are you guys interested? Do you guys think it's too boring for you, or is this something that you think you're gonna use a lot? Let me know that down below. I hope you guys really enjoyed. If you guys love Make Up Your Minds, leave me your comments down below. If there's a palette you just saw recently that you want me to do a Make Up Your Mind on, leave that down below too. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.